Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. If you have always believed that being uncertain, emotionally exposed, or vulnerable is a sign of weakness, you need to rethink that notion, because in her book, Daring Greatly, Brené Brown notes that vulnerability is our aptest measure of what it means to be courageous. Brené uses the book to illustrate how even though vulnerability is a substantive ingredient in the formation of challenging and often difficult emotions, such as grief, fear, and disappointment, it is integral to experiencing other emotional states such as creativity, love, empathy, joy, and creativity. As the author notes, when we shut ourselves off from vulnerability, we distance ourselves from the experiences that bring purpose and meaning to our lives. Reading Brené's book, Daring Greatly, will inspire you to dare to live your best life. Here are the best lessons from the book. If you like the sound of this book, you can get it for free with a trial of Audible using the link in the description. Lesson 1. Embrace vulnerability because it is neutral. When you think about vulnerability and what it means to be vulnerable, you are likely to associate it with negativity or unpleasant emotions such as grief, fear, and disappointments. Negative experiences. As Brené illustrates in Daring Greatly, other than being a learned state, this association has no merit because vulnerability is neither good nor bad. Brené notes that attaching unpleasantness to being vulnerable is what leads us into thinking that vulnerability is a weakness we need to overcome, which it is not. She notes, vulnerability is not weakness. I define vulnerability as emotional risk, exposure, uncertainty. It fuels our daily lives. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. Drawing from her many years of research and academia, Brené uses what she has learned to show why vulnerability is not as bad as we have made it out to be, and why we should embrace it. She mentions, I define vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. With that definition in mind, let me think about love. Waking up every day and loving someone who may or may not love us back, whose safety we can't ensure, who may stay in our lives or may leave without a moment's notice, who may be loyal to the day they die or betray us tomorrow, that's vulnerability. Takeaway. The author rallies us to accept that vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. She further notes that when we feel vulnerable, instead of passing it off as a sign of weakness, we should embrace it, because when we are vulnerable, we become unafraid of speaking our truth. Something the author notes takes a great deal of courage. Lesson 2. Build shame resilience. According to the author, sociopaths are the only people who do not experience shame. Therefore, trying to get rid of shame for good, or to not feel it at all, is a fool's errand, a mission you are better off not pursuing. Instead, as the author notes, you should callous your mind against shame and become shame resilient, because shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, and the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. Love can only survive these injuries if they are acknowledged, healed, and rare. Takeaway. On how to form shame calluses, become shame resilient and vulnerable, the author notes that shame is a result of emotions such as fear, discontent, and blame. She points out, the culture of shame is driven by fear, blame, and disconnection, and it is often a powerful incubator for issues such as perfectionism, stereotyping, gossiping, and addiction. The author advocates for the need to be intimately aware of our sense of shame, so that we can speak about it. As she mentions within the book, if we share our story with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, shame can't survive. Lesson 3. Excellence, not perfection. On what perfectionism is and why we should not pursue it, Brené Brown states, perfectionism is not about achievement and growth. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfectly, look perfectly, and act perfectly, we can avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. According to the author, excellence relates to pursuing a goal because it is important. On the other hand, perfectionism is about avoidance, failing to embrace vulnerability. Takeaway. Take Brené's advice and instead of focusing on being perfect, focus on being the best you possible, flaws and challenges notwithstanding. In her words, understanding the difference between healthy striving and perfectionism is critical to laying down the shield and picking up your life. Research shows that perfectionism hampers success. In fact, it's often the path to depression, anxiety, addiction, and life paralysis. Don't forget, you can get this book for free with a trial of Audible using the link in the description of this video. Thanks for watching, have a great day.